Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have, as promised, a special guest joining me this morning, Mr. Lorenzo Alexander, one of my favorite, especially as of late, one of my favorite retired Buffalo Bills members. How's it going this morning, man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Just out here in Phoenix, enjoying the nice weather. Here it's nice out in Buffalo. And other than that, man, just getting ready for these flag football games today.
Yeah, I just got back from Buffalo last week, and when I was out there, it wasn't nice. And now I'm back in Phoenix, like you, and it's like, oh, y'all getting 70-degree weather when I'm back in Phoenix, man. What happened?
Right, right. Yeah, it's crazy how that weather works up that way.
Yeah, yeah. So you got some flag football games going on. You're coaching those, or
Yeah, coaching, helping my the coaches out with my kids. So both of my sons play. So it's been fun just to get out there, help other kids get better, and just kind of get my feet wet in coaching.
yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool, man. I gotta with COVID, this year has just been weird. So I haven't even gotten the chance to have the full Phoenix experience yet. So I'm just
Right.
looking forward to kind of seeing everything and getting involved with everything. But listen, man, I got you on because obviously, so we play the Jets, and it's a week where a lot of fans feel like this is a good week to play the Jets.
Right.
Um, but so before we really talk about the Jets, though, so we talked a little bit over the summer, and you had some good things to say looking forward to this season, and I think most fans did. Um, right now, we're 4-2. We're one in the division, number one in the division. Um,
Right.
what are your feelings currently right now, aside from everything else that we're going to touch on? But what are your feelings overall about this year's version of the Buffalo Bills?
I've liked what I've seen for the most part. Obviously, we'll get into it a little bit, but there's been some, I guess, some flaws here and there that have popped up that need to be corrected if you want to be able to win the division. But overall, I really like the talent, like the guys, like the way they've been flying around and hunting up, even through adversity. You don't see things coming out in the media or a chaotic sideline, and I think that really speaks to the culture and the foundation that is been implemented and installed over the last 3 seasons. And so I'm still excited. This team is right where it needs to be. And what people need to understand every year, every Super Bowl champion goes through some type of adversity. And you can go back through each year, whether it was injuries, whether it was some drama with, a trade or a player, whether it was losing some multiple games in a row. Those teams had to endure that, had to overcome it. And so even with these hiccups of late doesn't have me worried. Not at this point because I know the men in that room, coaches and players, and they'll get this thing righted and going back in the right direction.
Okay, yeah, and well, I've been one, and I don't know if you've. I know sometimes you kind of see what goes on Twitter and what doesn't, but I've been one. I've been a very big supporter of Leslie Frazier. Obviously, I
Yeah,
think he's a great coach. I think obviously, you know, he's a defensive coordinator at this moment, but even as a head coach, I think he's just a great. I think he's a great guy. Um,
right.
as far as some of the hiccups that you kind of just alluded to there on defense, with you being a leader of the team when you were here, and now obviously I'm sure the team still kind of looks at you as a leader in the locker room, even though you're not physically there. The hiccups that we have on defense, would you consider that to be just it's early in the season and we just got some things to work out? Is it more of
Yeah,
a scheme change due to because we did move some pieces around. We have for the most part the core defense that we've had, but
right,
there are some new pieces and everything. So as far
right.
as talent and all that, do you think it's a scheme thing? Is it just I know that the
Yeah,
simple answer is execution, but I mean,
right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. I mean, obviously, not having an off-season OTAs, even though you had a core group of young, talented players that were coming back on that team, you do have the insertion of several pieces at every level. You think about AJ Klein, you think about Mario Addison, Quentin Jefferson, the guys up front. Think about Josh Norman on the back end. There's a lot of pieces, and yes, it may only be you're talking about four guys or five guys, but I mean that's half of your
right.
defense, depending on who's out there at that time. And so there is a huge difference from year to year in the NFL. People have to understand because of free agency that you can't necessarily rely on what you did last year. Yeah, top five, okay, the last couple of years, but yeah, that third season, you can't rely on those last two. And so you have to continually be able to adapt and bring in talent to help keep that standard. And because of OTAs and the way training camp went and the lack of preseason, there's really a lack of time to kind of codify and kind of come together so that you are executing at a certain level. Now with that said, everybody's had to deal with it. I think you've seen defenses around the league generally probably not play as well or to the standard that you're traditionally doing early on. You have some outliers, obviously, that are just, the Ravens, the Steelers, they're just perennial great top 5 defenses that have probably been able to overcome, and even to their standard, maybe a little bit of a dip. So it's part of the game. It's part of this season, and teams are going to have to overcome that. And when I watch the games, it's not stuff that can't be corrected. And because I've been in the locker room, I know it's not necessarily coaching. And so I know as a player, when I played, I needed those reps to be able to have my eyes right, my feet right, and not second guess myself or, think I saw something, but really just going back to my keys and foundation. And reps do matter. And so some things may flare up just because you haven't had the rep set to really solidify your foundation and what you want to be as a player and as a defense, in these regards.
Yeah. So, and so with that being said about the defense and like you said, reps do matter. So normally every year, at least what it looks like to fans or to me, every year, it seems like at the start of the year, the defense is actually by far ahead of the offense. And this year was a little opposite. It looks like, at least around the league, it looks like offenses are clicking. We got guys. I mean, Josh Allen. We can talk about our own guy.
Right.
He came out and he's looking like, I don't think anybody imagined that he would come out this season looking the way he looked. Does it? I know what you just said and everything, but does it concern not just with the Bills, but around the league? Does it kind of concern you that defense in general seems to be just not there?
No, I mean, again, it goes back to, kind of what I said, not having that rep count and yeah, you can just fly around and hit people on defense, but defense is more reactive. You got to communicate. If you don't have great communication, if you haven't been out there talking to guys, constantly working on those communication habits, you mess up, it's a big play. On offense, outside of maybe the offensive line, if you run the wrong route as a receiver and maybe you're the fourth option, nobody knows because the ball ain't even coming to you. I'm going over to my number 1 or number 2 option. I haven't even gotten through my progression. So it's not as apparent when offenses may be off when you think about it in that regards. Well, if you have a defensive lineman or one linebacker or one corner not operating, 9 times out of 10, it's a touchdown. Somebody's looking him up, and it's a big play at least, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think those are the differences in the way just how both sides of the ball work, where offensively, like I said, unless the O-lineman just whiffs a guy, most of the time it's not going to be a catastrophe, where defensively, if somebody's out of position, it will. And then also offensively, you know where you're going. Most of the time, I mean, it's predetermined. Yes, there are some levels of it to where, is it single high? Is it split safety? I may break off my route, but you understand where you're going. Versus defense, you have a gap, but you still have to react to what you see in front of you, which is much harder to do when you have linemen pulling. Is it play action? You just have more things to defend versus a receiver or a lineman who know I'm blocking on this play. It's not like I got to see is, dropping or not. Yeah, he may blitz, he may not. I can help out, but it's not like a big difference as far as you being in coverage or coming up to play the run.
Right. And like you said, it's completely reactive. And now with defenses being more exotic now, you have offenses, and I'm sure, I mean, they've always game planned against defenses. But one thing that I'm noticing now when watching like the All-22 this season and then comparing things to kind of last season, I'm seeing how teams are starting to really kind of have a game plan for Tremaine Edmonds. And I know that he's been injured a little bit this year.
Right.
But I'm also noticing they're really figuring out a way to kind of try their hardest to get him out of the play. So whereas I know a lot of people look at it and it's an overreaction, like, oh, this guy is, he's not playing as well this year. Or he's not that. I tend to think that it's more about just the way offensive coordinators are really game planning against our defensive key players. What's your take on that? Because I know you've defended which to me you shouldn't have to defend him, but you've defended Tremaine and you've defended other players.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, and if Tremaine is wrong, and I mean, obviously he hasn't played to a standard. He's been injured and nicked up, and he'll be the first one to admit if you actually interview and ask him, have you played up to your standard? He'll say no. But at the same time, it's like this overreaction of let's switch him, let's get somebody else in here, let's do this, doing that, which I get from a fan perspective. It's fandom, you're fanatic, so you're not you're emotionally so involved that you can't practically think through your argument. So I mean, I understand it. So, but being out of the game is some things that I can do now. Like I gotta say, hey, we about to blow the Jets out. Nobody cares because I'm not in the locker room.
Right.
So,
right.
but I feel that because I do have some knowledge, some insight, that I do need to calm the fan base down or people in general, or just give my perspective on what I'm actually seeing. Because when you watch a game, and I've been victim, I think we all been, and you watch a game, or even if you're playing a game, sometimes it feels much different than what actually happened. And until you go back and watch the game again and watch it more, preferably on all 22, where you actually have an end zone cut, a sideline cut, and can actually see what happened. And then on top of that, know the call that was made. So then you understand his responsibilities. And obviously I have an additional insight of actually knowing what they're being taught. So to one person who comes from a completely different scheme, it may be a negative, but if you come from the Bill system, it may be a positive as far as what you're doing. And so I think people just need to pump their brakes before they're trying to make a positional change on somebody because they haven't necessarily played to that person's or that fan's standard, not knowing the whole intricacies. And then I think people just panic in general. So, hey, calm down. 2 games. The dude was a Pro Bowler last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's banged up a little bit, dealing with some things. He's going to be okay. And that's just for anytime you evaluate any type of player. And that's something I've tried to do even throughout my career, as far whether it was me or the defense. When people write or say certain things, I'm like, do you know what we're being taught? And they'd be like, no. Well, I'm like, well, how can you give me a real grade, or how can you provide a real opinion on something when I'm being taught something completely different than what your opinion is based on?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's all about being informed and having real information, and then you can make real arguments that make sense and not just out of nowhere. And so that's kind of why I've done that and defended guys, because people don't generally know what's going on. And then when I'm assessing other teams, I try to do the same thing and hold myself to the same standard. Yeah, I can probably tell if it's cover 2, cover 3, man to man, and I'll give my opinion based on that. But I'm never going to tear down a guy. Oh, he needs to move positions.
Yeah.
When we don't fully know the whole story.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's at first, as a podcaster, let me tell you, I appreciate the fact that you are vocal about stuff, because it makes it easier for me. Because when people are like, nah, you don't know what you're saying, I'm like, look, I trust what Zoe says. So it makes it easy because, like you said, it's a major overreaction a lot of times where, like you mentioned with Tremaine, like a lot of people feel that he's like over pursuing or whatever. And again, like you said, I don't know what Coach McDermott or Coach Frazier is saying. Hey, this is how this is the game plan, or this is what your assignment is.
Right.
So we can't say like, oh, Tremaine is horrible this year. No, he's probably doing what he's supposed to do.
Right.
And we just, but to that, go ahead, my bad.
And then no, you good. But even to that point, the over pursuing, we're taught certain angles, but you plan. You go. I just wish people could just get out there and just realize, yes, I'm super athletic, but trying to tackle an Alvin Kamara, I'm just gonna name, Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, all these receivers in space by yourself is not the easiest thing. So yes, I'm trying to line myself up, and I would guarantee you, Tremaine is winning more times than not. But that's why you have a defense and it's not a defender, because if you do miss, you expect somebody else to be coming right behind you and cleaning you up. And even some of the best defenses have missed tackles. They just got guys out there flying around, hawking to the ball, and that's what you need collectively to overcome some of that when it does happen. But over the season, I would say Tremaine probably wins at a lot higher clip than he's missed over pursuing once in a while when a guy decides to put on the brakes and cuts back on him.
Man, that's what I see when I watch it. I definitely see him winning. Like I said, there are the play, and you mentioned it a couple minutes ago. Like there are the plays that obviously on defense, if you do miss an assignment, then yeah, it's a big play. So it's a bigger deal because it's normally a first down, or is normally a touchdown. So it's just a
Right.
different reaction. But to your
Right.
point about the film, I wanted to ask you about last week's game just a little bit, because Patrick Mahomes in the and then from here we can move on, because there's a lot of good. I don't want to sound like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
There's
negative
a
on my
lot of
team.
good.
I love my
Right.
squad. So, but Pat Mahomes was talking about how they ran the ball well, and he said that there were holes there that they just chose to run the ball. But if he chose to pull the ball back and throw the ball, the passing lanes were there as well. Did you see that as like when you watched it back, or what was your assessment
Yeah.
of the game this past week?
Yeah. I didn't. I was really more watching it for the pass. I wasn't watching what he was seeing as far as, hey, I probably could hit these guys as well. Let's just run the ball. I don't know if, I mean, yeah, they run the ball at a high clip, but if you could throw the ball, 50 yards down the field and score, why wouldn't you? So, for an offense and a quarterback, if it's there, you would still do both, because at some point you would think the defense would hunker down on the run.
Mhm.
So just from me kind of thinking through that comment real quickly, I don't know how true that is or not. But that's kind of my opinion on when somebody makes a statement like that quickly after a game.
Yeah,
Why weren't you passing the ball more then? Why didn't you have 500 yards passing if both of them were there? Because you
right.
are a prolific quarterback, right? So, but that's neither here nor there. I would have to watch it back to give you a real true assessment. But as far as the run game, when I watched it, that's what I was kind of looking at. And it's just, again, I mean, guys, whether it's a D lineman getting scooped or getting two at it. And so what that means is if you line up in the A gap and they're running the ball away from you, that means the guard gets across your face and puts you in the B gap, which happens from time to time, but then the linebacker wasn't able to make up for him. So essentially now you have two guys in the B gap. Or you may have a linebacker or a safety think they see something and they don't come and fit their proper gap. They guess instead of just running to their gap and playing good technique and making tackles. So and on those plays, they happened on that 4th-and-1 play where the guy hit his head on the goalpost. That was a touchdown. Just people not being in their gaps, and it's simple, but sometimes it's easier said than done, especially when you're bleeding, right? You're like, man, I gotta
Hmm.
fix this. I gotta fix it, and you try to do too much,
Hmm.
and you just cut yourself again because you're trying to do somebody else's job, and that's what happened. And then they got frustrated, and then penalties start to insert, and then even with all of that, they still had an opportunity to win the game, but they could never get off the field on some of those third down and criticals. You think about the Patrick Mahomes run there. So it's as bad as it seemed as they played, they still was in a position to possibly win that game. And then also, when you're playing those type of teams, every time you have an opportunity to score, you have to score. And so, the missed field goal, I think, played a big part of it as well. Just by having some points on the board, it gives confidence, obviously going into halftime. So there's a lot of different things just outside of the defense that just wasn't working. Obviously, offense too, not playing complementary football. The offense wasn't clicking, so defense was out there even more. So it's just a lot of things. You can't just point to one thing. There's a lot of things that overlap to allow you to win a game or lose a game. But definitely want to see this week just guys just being fundamentally sound, not trying to do too much, just coming down in their gap, fitting their gap up, replacing guys as a linebacker as you should when a guy gets scooped out of his gap as a defensive lineman, and just playing downhill and physical.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing them play downhill and physical, against the Jets, because it's a it's a week where the fan base needs a pump. We need some some positivity, man. There's so much
Right.
negativity going on, and it's like, look, you guys are overreacting for real. Like, we're 4-2, and part of the transition I want to make now. What's your thoughts about Josh, man? Like, this dude, they completely. And I've been like, this summer, I'm like, yo, he's gonna have a gear. I'm talking to all these other podcasters in different markets, and I'm like, no, I'm telling you, man, Josh is the dude. He's my guy, and he's really doing it. So I look like a genius, man. What are your
Right.
thoughts? How do you feel about Josh this year, man?
Yeah, it's not surprising at all. I mean, obviously, he's done a really great job of continuing to develop, have a great understanding of the offense. Again, people just gravitate to him. So having a guy like Stephon Diggs come in and then immediately have that chemistry was no surprise to me. And David's been doing a good job of play calling and putting guys in a position, and they just have a lot of weapons. And so it's always going to be hard to match up with the guys that they have. And obviously the biggest difference in jump from year one to year two is the ability to connect on the big play. I think prior to this year, they were like 25%. And then I know at least the first 4 games, it jumped up to like 70, 75% as far as
Wow.
connecting on throws 20 yards and beyond. And when you're able to do that at a high rep, you're going to score a lot of points just because defenses can't normally overcome big plays. And a lot of those plays have actually turned into touchdowns. You see the emergence of a guy like Gabriel Davis balling
Yeah.
out as a young guy. So they just have so many weapons. It's like, who do we take away? And then, you stuck with, okay, we're going to double Steph. All right. Then you stuck with John Brown. So once he gets healthy, we stuck with John Brown, then Cole Beasley, and then the game comes alive. And I'm waiting for my man Dawson Knox to get healthy because he's another baller that can really help him. And I guess the good part of having some of these injuries early in the season that you can build some depth, let some guys behind them get some growth, but then they'll come back later in the year and really be able to hit the ground rolling and have a lot of guys they can depend on. When it comes November, December time. But Josh has done a great job of just working on the details, putting the ball where it needs to be. I wish he would get down a little bit more from time to time, which it seemed like he did a couple of games ago. But he's a baller. He's a playmaker. I think he's done a great job in growing in the far as when he goes to that point, because we all want to play on the edge of being reckless. And sometimes Josh crosses over, and what Josh has learned to do is to pull himself back in within himself to then finish off games. Because a lot of times when guys get to that point, they get so mentally out of it that they stay there. But I think he's grown from a maturity standpoint to he's able to get himself back into that groove and getting back on himself on the right side of that line. And that's helped him win a couple of games as well. The last couple obviously haven't been great games, but I think some of those balls that are guys, and are they right on point? No. And I hate that narrative, right? He's inaccurate. And he's had some issues, but it's crazy when you listen to the announcers. It's raining. It's Josh is inaccurate, and then
Pat Mahomes do the
Pat
same
Holmes
thing.
does it.
Yeah.
Oh, it must be the weather
Oh,
now.
it's slippery. The
I
ball is
know,
super slippery.
slippery. Yeah, that was crazy to me. I'm like, what you just said? But it just goes to just where you start and where you have to kind of overcome because of people's perception. That was funny, but he's done a great job of working on that accuracy. The last couple of games, I think because of the losses, it's been more of a focal point of saying he's kind of tapering off. But those are catches those guys can make, and if you catch some of those balls early, some of them have just been plain out drops. A couple of them turn into interceptions. And
Dude,
then you
look at
it.
look at the catch that John Brown, and I get it, he was injured, but the touchdown
Right,
throw,
the slot. Yeah,
it was like perfect. I've never
right.
the
Yeah,
inaccurate thing. Come on, man! Like you
right.
can't make that
It's
throw if you're inaccurate.
right. And it's been several times, I think, over these last couple of weeks where balls that the receivers normally catch, they haven't caught. And because of that lack of consistency, creating, just a lack of rhythm, they haven't been able to overcome that quite yet. Those first 4 games, they was out of the gate pretty much and just doing whatever they wanted to do. So hopefully they've learned now, okay, this is going to happen at some point again where we have things don't go exactly right. How do we battle out of that to then overcome, become like an Aaron Rodgers type thing where they're trash the first half and they come back, or like a Russell Wilson, bad first half, come back and give you 30 in the second half. Patrick Mahomes, we're down 24 in a playoff game, we come back and beat you. We're down 10 in the Super Bowl, we come back and beat you. They have to get to that point now because this team is in a much different place to where you're just trying to change the culture to actually become competitive. That part has been done. You're at the point to where you're trying to make that transition to be a real big time contender and actually make a run at the Super Bowl. And those are the things that you're going to have to be able to overcome when things do go bad. How good can we be to get it fixed and overcome it and get back to who we are? Because those are championship caliber teams. Because as you play these better teams, you're going to have times where you may have 2 or 3 drives, offense and defensively. It doesn't work. It doesn't look right for you. But how do you get back to who you are and not allow that pressure and the presence of that other team to overwhelm you and consume you, especially on the big stage? And so I think that's where this team is at right now, especially when you think about who they played, the Tennessee Titans.
Hmm.
as well as the Kansas City Chiefs. Those are teams you're going to see again in the playoffs. I
Yeah.
don't know what round or what it's going to look like, but you're going to have to be able to overcome that presence and the pressure that they're going to apply because they're good teams as well.
And well, admittingly, so my overreaction from the last 2 weeks, there were times during the game where I felt like the team as a whole just didn't look engaged. Like for me, that was my overreaction. But to what you just said, to your point about Josh, the thing that I like, I'm like, dude, I'm like, I can't even express myself about it.
Right,
Josh just doesn't turn it off. Even when it seems
right,
like when you look at it as an overreaction, it looks like, oh man, the team just don't look like they really. And then he just has this extra gear that he gets the other guys around him ready. And
right,
I just love that. I feel like on offense, obviously we've had guys who have wanted to play and wanted to win. I never question that, but it just feels different with this guy Josh. So with that, with Josh and the offense having some success, we also see that the running game is having a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a struggle, because from what I see, I don't really feel like the running backs have issues. We recently just released my guy Quentin Spain.
right,
Um, so strictly football, obviously I'm not going to ask you anything outside of that, but strictly football,
right,
what effect do you think releasing, and I know he hasn't played this year for us, but what
right.
effect do you
Yeah,
think that has on the locker room, letting go of a veteran player like that, also a guy who wanted to be here? Like last year when
right.
it was time for free agency, it was like, no, I'm here, I want to be here, I don't even want to
Yeah.
look at other teams. So what do you think that
Um.
effect has on the running game, and then also just the
Right.
locker room?
Well, I mean, because he hasn't played, I don't know what effect it's going to have on the running game. I think getting John Feliciano back and and how they continue that rotation because they were rotating winners forward. Obviously, Spain. Are they going to continue to do that to work Feliciano back in? And then once he's playing at a certain level, are they going to continue to rotate? When I was watching the games, I thought Spain was doing a great job. Obviously, I'm not an offensive line coach, so I don't know what else was going on behind the scene. Because
Right.
when things like this happen, it's a lot of times, especially with a veteran, it's more about relationships and
Hmm.
and how are you seeing most of since you're getting released, it's more about your coaches and what that relationship looks like as far as what you're doing day to day and what you feel and what they feel. I know because of the presence that he had, the relationships that he had from a player's perspective, that guys obviously talked about it and like, man, whatever, however they felt about it, expressed that, with themselves within the locker room, as guys always do about whatever's going on. But that's not going to be a big enough distraction to move them away from being able to go out there and compete at a high level.
Hmm.
And so hopefully it was done in a way where it was communicated what the issue was, what was going on, and so everybody understands. You may not agree, but at least you understand, and it was upfront. And at the end of the day, that's the best way you can do it, so that you don't start having guys questioning your leadership or your intentions as a position coach or a head coach. And so that's why communication is key. And that's why, football is a relationship business, like most businesses. And
Hmm.
when you ever feel like things weren't done up to par without clear communication, that can leave room for guys not really buying in completely. And so you need buy-in from everybody at all levels if you ultimately want to get to where you want to go, especially from your premier guys and guys that you count on, because they're going to be able to extend your message into the locker room. And so I say all that to say I don't know exactly what went on. Hopefully it was done the right way, so that stuff doesn't triculate to other people's mindset and they like, man, I don't know. And then maybe you lose a guy in free agency based on how this situation was handled, because it is a relationship issue. And at the end of the day, guys need to feel like I can trust you, to be a part of this organization. So I
Yeah.
mean, but I mean, I really don't know. But those are some of the hiccups you can have. But if it's done the right way and it's upfront, guys can at least kind of move on from it, even though they may not agree with it. At least they told me what the truth was.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's at the end of the day that all guys really want. Just tell me that, give me your honest opinion. Don't facade me like, hey, we're trying to do this and we just want to see. It's not about you. Hey, tell me. Let me know. Hey, man, you're not working hard enough. Hey, man, you're not blocking well enough. Hey, man, you're not whatever. Then I can at least attempt to fix that or have a conversation with you about where I think I'm at, where you think I'm at, and then how do I get to where we're both in agreement. And I
Right.
think when you're dealing with grown men, you have to approach it like that. You can't treat me like I'm in high school and just do things
Thanks.
without explaining it to me. Because at the end of the day, this is my livelihood. I'm passionate about it. I want to play. I put in all this hard work, just like you did to become a coach. So let's talk about this. We're both grown, and let's be upfront and let's get in a room and talk about it and talk it out, clear the air, and then you can move. So that's the best way how you operate within a locker room, especially on the professional level, so that you can always have that trust built up, and really on any level at the end of the day. But you can be more, I think, more open when you're talking with grown men.
Yeah, and I love Spain. I'm a
Yeah, me
vocal
too.
supporter of Spain, man. He's a dog, and I tweeted out to
Yeah,
him like, "Yo, thank you for being a dog for my quarterback. Thank you for
right.
like he was really a or is a guy that I would love to keep in that locker room, but it is what it is. Good luck to him going forward. Let me ask you this, and then I got one more after this. I got one more for you, and then because I actually got a football game to get to myself. So with the trade deadline approaching and all that stuff, fans, we always were used to Brandon Bean kind of pulling something out when we don't expect it. Do
Right.
you, if you were in the role of Brandon Bean right now, is there a type of player or is there somebody out there right now that you would say, you know what, this guy would fit. We should try to make a trade for this guy, or there's somebody in free agency that you would be like, he'll make a good
Yeah.
fit.
Yeah, I don't even know. It's kind of hard because there's so many guys out there. Obviously, I mean, it seems like they're not maybe happy with pass rush or whatnot. So maybe like a guy like a Marcus Gold who ended up in Arizona may have been somebody you could have brought in. And I'm just spitballing out because
Right,
it's
right.
if you're a good player, unless you're on like a bad team like the Giants, they're not going to give away good players. It just doesn't happen. Then you also have to put in consideration, the player that you're getting. How many years are left on their contract? Are they going to be a free agent next year? Is it a big
Hmm.
money deal? Because obviously with the COVID and pandemic, the hit that it's had on the economy, therefore the impact it's had on the salary cap next year. Can you afford to continue to pay this guy's salary as well as draft guys next year, free agency guys where you want to shore up your team? And so all those things, and then you're going to have to give up a draft pick most likely, or
Hmm.
maybe a player, who knows? So is there somebody on the market that's going to make your team that much better, or plug a hole that you feel like you need to get to the next level that's out there that you don't already have on your roster that you would have to give this compensation for, and also think about future wise as well? And so that's what GMs, most people think about the here and now, but a GM is thinking from a macro level about future, now, here, what does that cost, risk versus reward. And I don't know if there's a guy out there, that has probably a lower end salary that you can put on this roster that's going to be better than the guys that you already have here.
Hmm.
Their issue is more about getting healthy, getting their guys back. Levi Wallace, Matt Milano, John Brown, getting guys healthy. Zach Moss, John Feliciano. So then you got you back to full strength and then hitting them. And I think that's their best bet. That's their essentially traded player, trading them off of the IR
Right
back
back to
onto
the
this roster. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And so that's where I think this trade is going to be at this year.
And you know what? We were actually blessed as a team last year. We obviously we had an injury here or there, but for the most part, guys were healthy last season. And
Right.
this year, early on, it does seem like the injury bug, kind of moved into one Bills drive and it's taking some time to relax. So hopefully we get these guys back soon because, like you said,
Yeah.
Milano, it's a completely different team when he's on the field. It's just different.
Right. And to that point, I think that even speaks more to because they didn't have an off season. They weren't at One Bills Live
Hmm. Yeah.
or Drive. It speaks to the people from Eric Ciano's team. Jason Osvart, Hal, Will, to all the Joes that are in the sports science, to Joe Mika that's in the athletic training room, and Nate. That whole crew, as far as the services and what that building means to getting guys prepared and ready to play a football season. They didn't have access to that stuff this year. They didn't
Right.
have access to the daily wisdom, so guys can maybe catch something early when they're working out. Like, oh, I'm having some hamstring tightness. Oh, okay, well, let's put this protocol together to get your hips right. or to maybe loosen up your quads, whatever it may be for that specific individual to help them overcome it. So I think it speaks more to that than anything else, just a wealth of knowledge and expertise that the Bills have invested in from a people perspective as well as a facility.
Didn't the Bills win the award last year for that too? Like the
Yeah, they won
yeah,
like the trainers award, which rightfully so.
yeah.
They do an excellent job up there as far as all the services and what they bring to guys.
Yeah. So I mean, like you said, it's a temporary situation that we're in with injuries. They're not long term. I think our guys are going to get back healthy, and we're gonna hopefully. I agree, man. I think this is a year that we can really make a run and make some noise if we have a healthy team. Like I don't see many defenses stopping our offense if Josh is who we see him to be this year.
You're
And
right.
then once, like you said, once the defense gets healthy, same thing. I don't expect them to be a top 2 defense like immediately or anything, but dude, we got dogs on that
Yeah,
defense that
and you don't have to be a top two defense to win. I
no,
mean, you got to win situations. People
yep,
look at yards. That's not really the telltale sign. It's about third down conversions, red zone percentage, turnovers.
hmm
If you can win in those three areas, and let's say you still give up 400 yards some way, somehow, which you normally won't because you're winning in those areas, then you're going to win a lot of games. So if you're making Pat Mahomes kick, every time he gets down to the end zone and they get down there 4 times in the red zone, you make him kick field goals 3 out of the 4 times, you have an opportunity to win that game
yeah,
because now your offense can outscore them. And so those are the things that you have to focus on and see whether or not our defense is progressing. Look at the third down percentages. Are they putting teams in third and long? Are they making teams kick field goals in the red zone? And then the type of turnovers that they're getting. If our defense starts really excelling in those three areas, they'll be fine. And it's something that they can do because, like you said, they have the guys on that roster, and they'll be getting guys back here soon too, which will help out immensely.
all right. Well, lastly, man, I caution Bills fans a lot this week that although we're facing the 0-6 Jets this week, those guys are professionals and it's the
Yeah,
NFL. And I know they're like, because John Brown appears to like he's out, and a couple of other injuries. And it's like, oh yeah, just sit
yeah,
guys, like it's fine, just
like
sit them.
7 or so guys, right?
It's like, look, okay, I understand. Like we feel like the Jets are
Yeah,
0-6. It's the
right. Yeah,
NFL. What are you
I
looking
agree with
forward
you.
to this weekend as seeing a response from the team as far
Yeah,
as because we're the last 2 weeks we're 0-2.
yeah,
This
I,
has to me this has it looks like a trap game. It
right.
just looks like
Yeah,
it.
I definitely agree with you on that. This is what I say. I say, guys, when you're in the league, you don't have the what is the privilege of wasting opportunity, and so unless you're injured. And for me, there's always a line between being hurt and injured. And I'm more of an old school cup player. I came up in the late '80s, early '90s, before we've had this cultural shift in our society, and especially football when it comes to like load management and
Mhm.
the right thing. So I've learned how to play probably injured in some cases, but hurt, borderline injured, and that's just my mentality. And maybe because I was undrafted, maybe because I've been cut, like I wasn't going to miss out on the opportunity to go out there and perform and help my team. And plus, your team needs your best players at all times because losing to the Jets is an AFC game could potentially mess up your seeding. So let's
Mhm.
say the team goes on a rail and they end up 13-3, but lose to the Jets. Another team is 13-3, and because it's an AFC loss and they may have an NFC loss, they get the number one seed. So you cannot take
Mm.
these games for granted for what they mean in the bigger picture either. So with that said, you still need to go out and treat the Jets, who the Jets have shown themselves to be, an 0-16. And when you have that mentality, you're going out there, hey, I'm going out here to prove a point, not like, no, I'm going out here to dominate
Mhm.
and, from start to finish. And that's what I expect to see. Hopefully the coaches, because offensive defense, I really can't think of anybody that is just straight dominant. So it's not like you have to game plan for anybody specifically. And that's mainly because they're 0-6 because they've lost a lot of their talent. So
Mhm.
just have simple game plans, go out there, execute. That's the number one thing. Playing physical, playing smart football, and playing downhill. and just beat this team up and dominate them. And when I say that, I don't mean you're going to beat them by 3 touchdowns. You can dominate a team and it still be 24-10.
Yeah.
That's a dominant game. And so that's what I want to see. This to control the game from start to finish. There's never no panic or, we got to this last drive to score to win, or we have to make this last drive to stop. This game should be in hand, and understood that it's won in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is closing out, right? You're in 4-minute drill, closing this game out, running the ball down their throats and making them stop you to get off the field. And that's what I expect. That's what this team is capable of doing with the talent they have. And that's the mindset they need to have, so you can start regaining some of that swag back. Because when you have losses, you start feeling bad. It ain't the same, but when you win and, you up here swagging out, balling, doing things better than what you thought, and you need to do that as your season progresses, and build on that, especially with, knowing who you're playing next week. And that's more of a coach's mindset. Players have to focus on this game, but knowing that the teams you're going to start to play, you have to start having that swag too, because that adds to your performance and what you're going to do just naturally by doing your job.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, hey man, I appreciate you taking the time out this morning and talking to me. Do you have anything going on outside of I know you're going to do your coaching
Right.
thing this morning, but I mean, do you have anything that you
Yeah.
want people to know about? I know your charity again does great work.
Right.
Anything you want to
Yeah.
plug here?
So the biggest thing, we got the ACES Foundation, LorenzoAlexander.org, if you want to continue to stay involved and up to date. Obviously, COVID has put a big damper on the stuff that we've been able to do. What I hopefully want to do in the near future is bring a couple of kids out to Phoenix from Buffalo, the South Park community that I work with, and as well as some other high school kids, and train them and do like a week-long mentoring program, training, show them Phoenix, get them out of Buffalo, just show them something different. I think that's always important for our young people. And then on top of that, been working with a community, with an organization called Black Lives at Cal, trying to hold our institutions and really starting at Cal, because that's where I graduated from. For our student athletes overall, but particularly our Black student athletes, making sure that they're not just commodities, right? But we are also developing and growing productive human beings that are going to be great in society. And so it's all student athletes, particularly our Black student athletes, because they don't graduate the same rate. They don't get the same jobs at the same rate when they leave. And they are a huge percentage of obviously our Black percentage of our student athletes in the money-making sports that are serving normally the entire university. So I'm making sure that we're taking care of the people that are taking care of us from an institution standpoint. And then lastly, hey, just get out and vote. Just want to encourage everybody. Obviously, we're, I think, a little under 2 weeks now as far as voting. Me and my mom last night were sitting, going through our judges, looking up and seeing who's had good reviews. And, so do that for your Congress, your Senate, your mayor, do all those things. So you're not just circling a dot next to Republican because that individual is a Republican or a Democrat, but actually know who you're standing with. And how they feel and the people you are, because so then you can hold their feet to the fire as we progress through the next until the next election cycle, next 2 years or so, and then obviously 4 years for presidential. So please do that. Obviously, allow your voice to be heard, and then continue that process by your activism in the community and supporting the people around you, which I know Buffalo does great. Anyway, so yeah, so that's what I got. That's what I'm doing, and that's kind of what I'm, all about right now, especially with the voting or the election right in front of us.
Okay. And well, if there's any way I can get involved with the anything that you're doing with the children out here, because like I said, I'm in Phoenix too. So anything I
Okay,
can do to help out,
where you at in
man.
Phoenix? Where you at?
I'm north. I'm in like Anthem, Dove Valley. I'm like 40 minutes north of
Okay,
the city. But
all right,
yeah,
yeah.
for real, anything y'all got going on, I'm more than willing and able to help out. And then man, I love your relationship with your moms too. Yesterday, y'all, or maybe it was 2 days ago, y'all posted a video of working out. That's so awesome, dude. That's dope, man.
No, it's been good. I haven't really been around my mom since getting into the league. 15 years, and never really been in California outside of 1 year. So it's cool that she lives in Arizona now. We moved her from Oakland to Arizona, and so she'll be at the games, all the games, soccer games and
That's
football
so
games
cool,
today,
man.
hanging out. Yeah, and it's so cool because I was the only child, and those are the things that you sometimes take for granted.
Yeah.
But realize as you become a parent and you get older, how cool it is to have your parents around. Especially, I've had some grandparents pass recently, so just having your parents around so that your kids can experience their wisdom and who they are and figure out why you are the way you are. Oh,
Yeah.
that's why Daddy does that because Grandma or Nana does that. So it's cool to see.
Well, hey man, keep doing what you because I'm telling you, you're an inspiration for real. And even with you not being in the league right now, because I got a feeling that I'm gonna keep begging you to come back like everybody else will. But you keep doing what you're doing, man. You're an inspiration. I love watching the relationship that you two have. And hey, go Bills. Take care, man.
Yeah, go Bills. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Later.